Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Anxiety Warriors podcast. We are your hosts, Margot
and Abby. We are friends, teachers, and storytellers, but above all, we're anxiety warriors on a mission to raise awareness and understanding about anxiety and mental health.
You will hear honest, engaging, and joyful stories from us and many other anxiety warriors about living with anxiety. If you're seeking a space to laugh, connect, feel inspired and empowered, and learn valuable tips rooted in mindfulness and more, your warrior community is here for you.
Join us as we navigate this journey of life together.
Welcome, warriors.
Yay!
Oh, my stomach just made a sound when I said welcome, warriors. It was like, wow.
Oh, I didn't hear it. Was it like welcoming too?
Yeah, it's also, I think, just like you're hungry, eat something. But yes, it was a very welcoming sound, like
Maybe
welcome food into my belly.
Yeah. It wanted to welcome. It wasn't welcoming.
Yes, it was looking to receive, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a feeling. You know, I actually feel like hangry would have been a great feeling to add to Inside Out 2, which is our topic today.
Oh, I mean, I feel like they did reference hangry. I feel like they did reference it. And you and I have seen it a few weeks apart. Mm-hmm. Your memory might be a little bit better than mine.
Probably not. It's a lot of in the brain and then out the brain, like everything else. But we'll see.
I took notes during the movie so that I could remember things.
Of course you did. Wait, did you and Dan see it in the theater or did you pull it up? Oh, you did. Okay, so did we.
Yeah.
In the theater. Okay.
We saw it at it's called the Alamo, and Sony just bought it, so I'm waiting for it to be ruined like everything else. Hopefully not.
Okay. When you say ruined, what do you mean?
Oh, because it's like this really cool movie theater where they serve food, they serve drinks, like to your seat.
Yeah.
So you're like sitting there having a meal, watching a movie. The seats are really nice. Like, I know some theaters are starting to do that now, but this one just has like a very like special vibe to it. It's not like an AMC, right?
Right.
Like not, or, whatever.
And you think they're going to change it from that?
Yeah. So Sony just recently purchased the Alamo
brand
or whatever. And
so maybe, but if people love it enough, they may make that one like a what's it called? Like almost like a boutique theater where it's like, just because they have a different owner, maybe they keep the the formula.
Right. Yeah. Barnes and Noble just purchased, off topic, one of the small bookstores because the small bookstores were needing help because of things like Amazon. And so Barnes and Noble just purchased it. And the word is they're going to try to keep it the same because the tattered cover is very special too.
We'll find out. That's a great name.
Yeah.
I like that. The tattered
cover. Lin-Manuel came. I told you about that.
Oh, that's right. That was one of your
wins
the tattered
cover.
Back. Yeah. Amazing. Okay.
Anyway.
All right. So as you've heard, at least briefly in the last couple of minutes, warriors, we're going to be covering our thoughts and our feelings about the latest Pixar, right?
I think it's Pixar
film.
Because Disney now owns Pixar. So yeah.
So yes. Okay. One and the same then, pretty much.
Yeah.
And the main reason is because the main new emotion.
Yeah. She was like spotlight. Like,
right. She had the spotlight out of the new emotions that are present.
Yes.
She has this, like, if joy was the spotlight before, now we have this like this partner, like it's like light side, dark side or something, right?
Yeah.
For joy and anxiety. So she was the main new character.
Yeah. And it was funny. I appreciated how, I mean, anxiety just looked frazzled, like the physical look of anxiety. And all the other characters had more feminine or masculine vibes to them. And anxiety really didn't have a gender vibe at all. I'm saying she because
female character, but some of them are male, right?
Yeah, but the character's voice is a female, and that's the only reason I'm saying anxiety is a she.
That's a good point.
But in the looks of all of them, like you look at Joy and you're like, yeah, that's a female emotion in a sense. Or you look at anger and you're like, yeah, that's a more masculine emotion in the depiction in the movie.
Right. I was about to say, yeah.
You know, and then when you look at the parents and their emotions, the mom, they were basically all female. And the dad, they were basically all male. I don't know
Right.
if you noticed that, but they like
I did.
represent, yeah. But anxiety in Riley's body did not really go to it. She looked like a Fraggle, you know, like a
Yes, she
Fraggle
did.
Rock.
Yes, she did.
So
If
I
you're
thought
not
that was
familiar, go ahead and
interesting.
Google that, Warriors.
Yeah. And then listen to the theme song and jam to the song Fraggle Rock, the Fraggle Rock song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the music in the movie was great too.
Oh my
It's very
God. Yeah.
sentimental. It's very
Oh,
sentimental, which most Disney Pixar movies
yeah.
have excellent scores, but yeah, the music is very special. It's a nice score for sure.
Did you get a lump in your throat at any point or feel like crying?
Oh my God. I mean, I'm quick to waterworks.
Yeah.
So yes, but I will say I cried harder and more in the first movie.
Yes.
Just because it was the first one out of anything. I'd never seen anything like it, right? And because we're talking about it. And so yeah, I cried harder and more. And then for this one, I didn't cry up until the last like 15 minutes, but then I didn't stop crying for the 15 minutes. Like I wasn't bawling the whole
Yeah.
time, but like it was consistent emotion for those last maybe 15 to 10 to, I might be mischaracterizing the time frame, but it was
Yeah.
like anywhere between the last 8 minutes and 20 minutes, like somewhere in that last ending of the part of the movie, it was like a recycled waterworks for me for like the whole
Yeah.
ending.
I felt like
So
the
yeah.
music really played into that. Like obviously we know music does that, but I felt like I had a lump in my throat for a lot of parts because the music was really playing with my emotions while I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. All right, so quickly, the new emotions, the 5 new emotions. We obviously said anxiety, and that's pretty much what we're going to be talking the most about, I imagine. But we also have envy, embarrassment, nostalgia, and ennui.
Yes.
And they were all awesome. How did you
Nostalgia only
feel?
got a cameo.
Yes, I was about to
Yeah.
say, yeah, she basically pops in as like a little old
Yeah.
grandmother a couple
Yeah.
times. And we should also say that we're going to be offering a couple spoilers here. And so if you haven't seen the movie, maybe you want to, hit pause now and come back to this episode after you've seen the movie. Just a warning before we
But what
really
have
dive
you been
in.
waiting for?
I don't know,
Hello.
man. I don't know, man. What are you doing with your
Anxiety
life?
is starring in this movie. Like what?
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, like hurry up, get the
Yeah.
fucking show on the road.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you think about, well, let's start with how did you feel about the 5 new emotions? Obviously, anxiety aside. Like, so maybe what were your thoughts about like the choices?
Yeah.
How they were represented?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one thing is I had read at some point, I can't remember if it was before or after seeing the movie, that they also had played with the idea of having guilt and or shame.
Yeah.
And they were differentiating the two in what would be the difference between guilt and shame, but they thought that using those two characters wouldn't help the plot. So they ended up not using those two emotion characters, which I thought was really interesting, right? And so instead they had embarrassment, which is a little different than feeling guilty and feeling ashamed of stuff, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But I understood why they did that for the movie. But I feel like, I mean, this franchise could go on forever and they could always introduce more and more and like, hey, keep educating the public because grown-ups need this just as much as kids, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The characters, I mean, I just want to focus on anxiety. I loved the complexity they gave her. I love how it wasn't just nervousness, right? Because I just feel like still to this day, like a lot of people just associate anxiety with fear. And I really loved they touched on so many parts. I'm not sure if I should say them now or we're going to talk about this in a little bit, right? Like they touched on people pleasing. They touched on perfectionism. They touched on not feeling good enough, right? They touched on like really wanting to be liked to feel safe.
Yeah.
They touched on not correcting people. Like I loved that. I was like, oh my God, yeah. Like anxiety doesn't want us to correct other people. Then we're gonna stand out, right?
Right.
Like and like anxiety getting involved in competitiveness, and and they touched on how anxiety is not bad. It just needs some extra support to be a little bit more balanced. So I like that. And then I mean, I appreciated the other characters they brought in. Envy was fine. I didn't feel like, ooh, Envy, right? Like, I didn't feel like Envy had a big spotlight. She was kind of like tagged along with anxiety. And I guess I had never really thought about how anxiety and envy work together. Like, of course, all emotions work together, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
Sure.
I never thought of like envy fueling anxiety. Right. I liked embarrassment. I did like it. I liked the actual character. I liked like his big, quiet, like hoveringness, right?
Yes, with like his hoodie, and like at one point, like he definitely had like his ass crack out.
Yeah,
It was like very awkward.
it's just awkward. Like, remember that time they go to like fist bump or something, and it's all like awkward, and then at the end, like Joy touches his hand, and she's like, "Oh, your hand's sweaty," and I was like, I can see how embarrassment and anxiety would have a lot more relationship, although they didn't in this movie, right? Like, I feel like my embarrassment and my anxiety are much more closely related to each other, right? I feel embarrassed, and then anxiety needs to overthink it, right? And then ennui was sweet. I don't think I would have ever thought of ennui, like, as like an emotion in my teens, but the way that they captured that emotion, I was like, oh yeah, I can relate. I feel this.
Totally.
What about you?
Yeah, I pretty much agree. I did connect with envy though a lot. More so than embarrassment, which is interesting. So like I think it's just like the way that our experience is with anxiety, what we're tying it to. I will say, I don't want to like literally repeat everything you said, but I did feel like certainly they didn't spend a lot of time touching on the other emotions. They kind of just sprinkle in with the anxiety, right? But like I get it, you have to have an anchor, just like Joy was the anchor in the first Inside Out.
Yep.
And I appreciate like the fact that these are like secondary emotions, right? They're not like the innate, like born with emotions.
Right.
It's sort of like learned behavior based on your experiences and the way that you view the world, over time. And so I appreciated that aspect of it too. It's interesting what you said about them keeping out shame and embarrassment. I mean, shame and guilt, and just going with embarrassment instead. I think that aside from the plot points, I actually just am grateful because those are so heavy. They're so heavy.
And
Embarrassment's
shame's
heavy.
complex, right?
Exactly.
Like,
And guilt. So I feel like embarrassment feels a little bit more universal, like, and it really goes to the age group that Riley is supposed to be now, right? As a 13, I think she's 13, right?
I think
8th
so.
grade, right? I think it's just right.
Yeah.
She's about to go into high school. They're all going to different high schools, right? So like basically the beginning of the movie, we learn that our main character, Riley, who we know was a little girl in the first movie, is now a teen. She and her two best friends are all going to hockey camp together. And she basically learns that the three of them will not be attending the same high school next year. And then chaos ensues after that, pretty much, right? And we get introduced to all these characters, and we won't say more about the entire plot. But that's like the gist of how things go. And so then we're following how our character Riley is experiencing this discomfort without really having any previous understanding of some of these emotions. It's like they all show up one day under the guise of like, all right, it's puberty time now. The brain is changing. And so here come all these, and the way that they depict it in the film is a construction crew kind of comes in and fucks shit up, basically. And these new emotions, anxiety at the helm, come right in and basically take over what they call the dashboard, which is just all the feelings that are part of Riley's makeup. Anyway, so that's like the general gist. But yeah, my initial feelings were I love the physical look of anxiety. I didn't really think about the fact that they look not gendered in the film, right? Like obviously, like we know Maya Hawke is a woman and she's the voice of the character, but I didn't even consider like the physicality of
Mhm.
or the when I say physicality, like the things that are stereotypical for girls, right? Or girls or boys or whatever. Nothing looks stereotypical about this character, which is interesting. It is very
Mhm.
sort of non-conforming in that way, which is cool. I think that kind of goes to like the broader feeling that anxiety, right? We know, as we talk about all the time here, is that anxiety encompasses all the other feelings within it,
Yeah.
including sadness and joy and all of it, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so I appreciate like you bringing that up because it's like, oh yeah, well that makes sense that it's sort of gender neutral,
Mhm.
right? Just like the feeling of anxiety is sort of a little bit in every other feeling that there is.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that well, so yeah, well, that was basically my response to that question.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so let's like I don't know, talk about the feelings. Like
Yeah.
what would you rate this film? What maybe wasn't so great? Did anything stand out that was like, I didn't love that, or I wish I could have changed that? Like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I want to start with something that I really loved because I
Mhm.
really loved this film. Like I'll watch this again and I don't really rewatch movies unless I love it.
Mhm.
I really appreciated how they touched on beliefs and how
Mm.
Riley did have a foundation of like healthy, pleasant beliefs at the beginning of the film. She's a good friend, she's a good person.
Yeah.
And anxiety comes, and anxiety basically wants Riley to be motivated and driven, and be liked. And so anxiety wants to destroy that core belief and add her own, which is I'm not good enough, to fuel Riley to do more.
Right.
And
To
that,
protect her.
yeah,
Right.
exactly. And even now talking about it, I have chills. Like that touched me so deeply because one, like I know so many anxiety warriors can relate to that belief I'm not good enough. We don't know when we got it, right? I like to blame fourth grade, but we don't know when we got it. Um, and how emotions do play into our beliefs, right? And how like beliefs can still change our beliefs about ourselves, our beliefs
Yeah.
about others. And so I really appreciated that part, which was it was part of the story for sure, but it wasn't like the focus, right? Like anxiety was the focus and joy trying to save that one belief was a big focus of the story, right? I'm a good friend, I'm a good
I'm a good
person.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I appreciated that inclusion of beliefs in it without it like being in your face,
Yeah.
right? So I really like that. I mean, I just anything about emotions, anything about like was it anthropom blah 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 that word, the taking an emotion and making it a person,
Oh, oh God.
personifying, I don't
Yeah,
know.
personifying, I guess,
All
is
right,
good
let's
enough.
use
I
the
don't know that
easy
that's the
word.
exact word that works, but yeah, you get it, warriors. You get it.
I know this word that I want to say, and I can say it in my brain. It won't say in my mouth, though. I hate that.
Spell it. Spell it.
Oh God, no, I can't because I can't say it out loud. I don't know.
All right, whatever.
Yeah, I'll text it later. Um, but I really appreciate that because I feel like all humans can benefit from seeing their emotions as a figure, right?
Mm,
As an extension of another human being within them, right? As
mm,
opposed to this like sensation, right? And then once
yeah.
you're like, oh yeah, this is what my emotion looks like, then you can like learn how to care for it better. Then like, oh, this is this feeling that's super unpleasant. Who wants to care for an unpleasant feeling, sensation? Right? So like
Yeah.
again, I just really appreciated those things. Um and then there was just so many like I'm looking at my notes right now, but like the over planning and the overthinking and the interrupting
Yes.
her sleep, right? Like she couldn't sleep because she was thinking so much. Um I also appreciated, and I'm glad that it didn't end this way, obviously, but at one point Joy was like, oh, are we just not meant to have joy when we're grown-ups? And it like made me
Yes.
sad inside.
Oh, hell yeah. That was
Yeah.
devastating.
Yeah, but it
Oh,
didn't end there, right? Like we still saw like Joy was with the parents and joy is
Yes.
possible, right? But I
Yeah.
really liked like the questions that they brought up throughout that weren't like just explicit in your face.
Right.
And also the one other thing that while reading my notes is like how anxiety wanted to think of every possible thing that could go wrong, and she used the imagination and all the like little imagination people to think of every possible scenario that could go wrong in it, and how Joy came and was like, well, what are the things that could go right? And like
Yeah.
that
And she
whole
messed with it.
scene
Yeah.
was so perfect. It was
Yeah.
so perfect because it nailed anxiety. Anxiety is just there to help you. And part of helping you is ruminating and overthinking and perseverating on every possible thing that could possibly ever go wrong in a situation, even though it might be the most ridiculous thing ever. And then the reframe is what could go right. Like, and
Right.
I
And
loved
how then
that
it
in
started
it.
to pop all the other beliefs. Then
Yeah.
that moment, it was like
Yes.
you saw like the light bulb go on for Riley as they were manipulating her a little bit, right? Like, oh, but not everything is going to potentially be horrible. What are something? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a reframe we've talked about a lot
Yeah. Right.
together.
Yeah, what can go right, and so anyway, so I loved it. I feel like if 5 stars is the max, I'm giving it 5 stars. I would see it again. And I
Anything you would change?
I don't know, maybe after listening to you I'll have some ideas, but I didn't walk
Mm.
away thinking, oh, like given the movie, given the time length, also
Yeah.
I will say, like, I stayed for the end of the credits to see who had consulted on it, and 3 of those people had actually like been presenters when I was in mindful schools.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
And they had
crazy.
actually consulted on Inside Out 1, which is why I was wanting to see who was there. So 3 of them, one of them, he's worked with the Dalai Lama and made this like wheel of emotions thing. One of them studies a lot around awe, and I can't think of the third person right. Oh, and the other one's Kristen Neff, all about compassion.
Oh, yeah.
And so I also had a lot of joy knowing the people that consulted on the emotions or people I've studied with, right? So I was like,
Mm,
oh my God, this is really cool.
that is cool.
Um,
That's so good to know.
what about you? What did you like? What did you not like? Are there things
Yeah.
you would change?
I really enjoyed it. As I said before, I liked the first one better.
Mhm.
Uh, which did surprise me a little bit. I do think my expectations for this one were higher because of anxiety. And
Mhm.
so I had a little bit of built up, I guess, experience thoughts in my mind about what it was going to be.
Yeah.
And it definitely exceeded my expectations for the better when it comes to like almost everything, like you said. It's touching on all of the complexity that is
Yeah.
this way of being. And I truly didn't expect them to be able to touch
Yeah.
on so many aspects of anxiety. It did make me wonder if it was overwhelming for children to some extent.
Mm.
Um, I guess of a certain age, right? And yes, it's
Mhm.
true that this character is a little older. It's just more about like, younger kids are going to see it. And it's like when like you explain that Santa's not real, but the kid doesn't understand until all of a sudden they understand.
Yeah.
You get that like as they grow, right? But
Yeah.
there were a couple of moments where I was like, "Oh, that was a lot," And I look, and I feel that way about a lot of Disney and Pixar films actually. But ultimately, I think it's good because we want the grown-ups and kids' lives to learn something too, to gain
Mhm.
something, to have something to take away for themselves. So that way they can experience themselves differently. So then they can hopefully be different with and around their kids or
Yeah.
students or whatever. To understand that like it's something that's in the public that we can all consume and enjoy together,
Yeah.
um and that is for kids, made for kids, but really made for everyone, and it to make something that that parents and caregivers or whoever in the lives of children will want to see too,
Mhm.
right? And will benefit from too. You can't say that about every movie that's made for kids, right? Most things that are made for kids, yeah, maybe you as the grown up like enjoy it a little. You're like, oh, that's cute. And then after the third song, you're like, oh my God, fuck my life. Like, this is the worst song ever, or this book sucks, or, right? You're just over it, but your kid
Mhm.
keeps with it. But this is the kind of thing where I do feel, and I agree with you that like you can just keep rewatching this and
Yeah.
find new little things that you missed before that
serve you, that are interesting, that you're like, oh shit, I didn't even notice that before.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was wonderful. I definitely would highly recommend it for everyone, not just people with kids, because you and
Yeah.
I don't have kids,
Nope.
and not just for people that are teachers, just because we're teachers. I would have seen this without being a teacher
Yeah.
because I like Disney and Pixar movies.
Yes.
So there's that.
Yes.
With
And
giant
emotions.
children and emotions, right?
Yeah.
And so there's that. So definitely highly recommend. I definitely would give it 5 stars as well. The one thing I'll say on a really personal note is just I was deeply triggered by the movie, and I didn't expect that either. And so there were some moments where I was like, I felt protective of anxiety. And I felt like I was like, I was the anxiety for anxiety. I'm like, hang on. Like, I feel like you're making out anxiety to be out of like a little bit too much of a villain in this moment. And so, and again, that's where I'm kind of where I was going before when I said like in the way it's depicted, but with my through my adults traumatized lens. And so like acknowledging that. And so without putting that onto children and well, they fucked up on I just noticed in myself that I felt triggered by some of the implications of anxiety's behavior or whatever. It was just like, even though I know it's coming from the place of like, we know that she's wanting to control everything in order to keep Riley safe, right? That's the goal. Keep her safe. And we have to overthink all these things in order to keep ourselves safe, right? Or that's the mind that anxiety gives us. And so it was just interesting for me to notice when I was feeling like a raise in my cortisol or like my heart pumping a little bit. And afterwards I was talking to Adam about it in the car ride. I'm like, I don't know what it is. Something just doesn't feel right. And then I was like, oh, it's because I'm being protective over this feeling. I don't want this feeling to be viewed as bad or negative or solely negative. And so I'm grateful that at the end they kind of proved the point of like, oh, okay, anxiety is just doing her job, overkilling it, but doing her job, which is to keep Riley safe. And so from the lens of like, everyone doesn't understand what this emotion is and why it's so the way it is, wild and crazy and untethered and all the things, when they start to understand her better, right? They do better. And so I was grateful for that at the end. It soothed me. I was like, okay, she's not a villain. You're no longer vilifying her. And so the only thing I would have enjoyed is just that if they would have found maybe a couple more minutes to solidify the point that anxiety is there to protect and has a role, right? Because I do feel like at the end, it was sort of like the pot, whatever the fuck am I trying to say? The lid was off the pot, right? She was completely lost her shit at the end there during Riley's panic attack, which I also had a very hard time watching, a very hard time. I had to look away because I've had dozens of panic attacks. And so it was very triggering. Yeah. And so I think that I would have loved a couple extra minutes because then at the end there, they were kind of like, okay, oh, that was a good suggestion. And then they like put her in a chair with some tea. And I thought that was funny, right? It was like, okay, like, yeah, sometimes those are some habits that might soothe us anxiety warriors. Like, okay, yeah, you did it. Go sit down over there. And that part of me was like, okay, so you're basically just like, shut the fuck up, right? Like, oh, good, that one thing was good, but now, okay, go be over there. And I get that. And at the same time, I'm like, I don't know. I found myself feeling a little bit protective over the feeling. So that was it. But again, it doesn't change how I feel about the movie or like, I think they had an impossible task, tackling this feeling. And so there's that, but
yeah, it's so funny because I relate to you. Sorry, go on.
No, that's it.
I relate in the feeling of protectiveness. Like there was a little bit of like, I don't know what the word I want to use, but like the hand signal is like a little squeeze, like a little tension going in. And for me, I feel like that was a little bit of my protectiveness of like, how are they going to depict anxiety? Although I had really good, like, I was like, I felt pretty confident they were going to do it well. What's funny is the way that you're talking about protection, I felt like I saw that in little ways, like in nuanced ways, right? It wasn't explicit, but like when Riley first went into the girls' locker room and anxiety was first coming in And Joy's like, oh my God, it's our friends. Let's be silly and laugh and make faces. And Anxiety's like, no, don't do that right now. There's new people here and we need to figure the place out and we need to this and that.
Right.
And then Joy like pressed the button for Riley to be extra silly. And then the whole team got in trouble. Right. Yeah. I felt like that was a good moment where it wasn't explicit. It was like, hey, everyone, Anxiety's trying to protect Riley here. Yeah. I also felt bad for Joy because like,
yeah, right.
Right. Like, oh yeah, we all have learned to tone it down as we age. We can't be all silly. Now we're learning to be silly goofballs again. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah. No, I do.
But I felt like there was those pieces that until Anxiety like got full on control where they were showing, hey, listen, wait, let me be in charge. Wait a second. Let me help out with this. We don't want people to take this the wrong way. We want them to like us, right? We're going to be in school with them next year, not them. Like yeah. I felt like without it being explicit that they were showing Anxiety was trying to help and protect.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't suggesting that they were never showing her trying to help and protect. I'm just saying that like they had her increase, right? Her behavior as Anxiety became worse as time went on, and as she became the director,
as she got power,
right? As she got power, she was literally she was in charge of all the other emotions too, the new emotions, and she was literally reining in everything because as like we know, Anxiety, we feel like we have to have everything controlled and buttoned up or whatever. And so again, I wasn't trying to suggest that they weren't finding nuanced ways to appreciate all that Anxiety does that's valuable.
Yeah.
That isn't what I think it's just more that like we see her lose it completely. And then it's kind of like we snap our fingers and like, oh, okay. Like, and sometimes it's like that. And sometimes it's not like that. And so I just felt like I didn't want her to. There were a few moments as like in like the thick of the middle of the movie where it was just like, okay, they're making this feeling out to be like the devil, like truly awful. And that part felt longer than the early parts where it was like, hey, what about like, because in the early parts, it was sort of like suggestion, like, well, actually, we do need to be careful in the locker room. Let's maybe tone down the joy a little and be more thoughtful about our this new environment that we're in. Like, and so, yeah, I very much appreciate a lot of the nuanced stuff. It was just more like which a movie has to do, right? You have to have this sort of like meaty middle, this peak where everything's in conflict, right? And so it was more that part felt very lengthy for only a 90-minute movie, and then the end part was just kind of like snapped our fingers, like, oh, okay, here, oh, good suggestion, okay, go sit down. Again, I'm like finding stuff to complain about, like, that's just my over analytical mind of just kind of like I did have high expectations for what they were going to do, and they exceeded it for all of it, truly. Yeah. I just noticed in myself, I'm like, oh, I'm just feeling protective over this feeling.
Yeah.
And that's on me, you know?
Right.
But yeah, that was it.
No, I totally get it. And like, there was no protection over any other feeling, right? I was like, Joy, sadness, you do you know, like you're
whatever.
Good. Yeah. Like,
that's one feeling I do not really relate to at all.
No, I didn't relate
even
to
in my teen years. I was like, no, that was not me.
No, I liked it. I appreciated it. I could see why they made that choice and how it fits and this and that. I liked how she had her own little handheld like console or whatever,
little dashboard.
Yeah.
Right, so she was secretly controlling things from there if she wanted to. If
she cared to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I will watch it again. I'm sure there's a lot more that I'll see the second time around because, like you and I have both said, like going into this, I was excited, but I was also a little nervous, right? Just how they were going to portray it. But for me, I felt satisfied because honestly, for a lot of my life, like Anxiety was a villain for me. Yeah. Right? Like it was. I wanted to battle that bitch, not give her some tea and tell her it's okay to let go of the control. Right. And so I felt like I was okay with that. I understand there could have been more at the end in how do we all work together, right? Like I do feel like, yes, there could have been a little more at the end, but who knows what got cut.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. You have to, it's like when you're watching an adaptation of a book, like you're not going to get all the things, right? You're going to get the best they got. And no, they crushed it. They really did.
Yeah.
I hope they do a third one. Let's see what college is like for Riley.
Yeah, exactly.
Or just high school, right? She
High
could be a
school.
senior, or
Mhm.
although that'd be maybe a little bit too much the same, you know. Which there was, I was talking to a couple of friends that saw it too, people that don't really have anxiety in the way that we do.
People
Which
that
is
can't
most
relate to
people,
the
which is
shape
most people.
shifting.
Well, they one friend in particular, he said, he was like, I do feel like I wish that the plot were more of a departure from the first movie in terms of like the bell curve of it all. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's most kids' movie. But his point was more just like, it was the same thing. It was like all the characters get launched from the dashboard. And like, fair enough, but I didn't even think about it. Like, I hadn't seen the first one in so long that like I didn't even.
Right.
But anyway.
Same.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it was other than my expectations for it being great or wanting it to be great, I didn't think at all or remember what happened in the first one enough to be like, well, that was too similar to the first, none of that. But
right.
All in
it's
all,
probably hard
Warriors,
when you're
loved
stuck
it.
in a body, right? Like the main characters are all stuck in a body. It's like, how much can they really do? Right?
No, that's true. That's true. Very,
yeah.
very good
They
point.
did add the whole belief system. That was new.
That was very cool. It was very cool. Like seeing her core shift and change color and be thrown out completely and then come back slowly or differently. Yeah, it was.
And then like come
together.
It's like, oh no, we're all of these beliefs and things. And sometimes some are stronger than others. And yeah.
Super good. So Warriors, we recommend it. We think you should see it ASAP. If you haven't yet, hurry up to the theater, go see it. It's probably going to be on, I imagine it'll be wherever it's going to be streaming in no time. But when it does, if you're not going to the theater, at least watch it on streaming when you can.
And then sit with a journal. Like, I mean, so at the Alamo, when you order food, you put it on these little white pieces of paper and it's kind of like in the dark. Right. So I didn't bring a notebook. And then I was like, Margot and I are going to talk about this. Like, I need to take notes because I don't know when we're going to talk about it. I don't want to forget stuff. So I had these like little white pieces of paper. But if I had like a journal, I probably would have written more because I do feel like there was a lot of things that were worth reflecting on more while watching. So if you watch it from home, maybe sit with a journal, add some thoughts and reflections to it.
It's a good idea. It is a good idea for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Abby, do you have a win of the week?
Win of the week. I'm sure I do. Okay. Yes, my win is we had friends over on Saturday. And we also all hung out on Thursday for trivia. It's been a very busy, hanging out. Social, thank you. And we made up our own Hot Ones game. So
nice.
We made both chicken wings and cauliflower, like breaded cauliflower. And we had loads of hot sauces. And we had like fun cards to ask each other questions. And we did it. And then we played another super fun game after that was like a combination of telephone and Pictionary, but it's not telestrations, it's something else. And it was really super fun and funny. And that felt like a win.
Right. Nice. Some socialization. It's good. In
good
moderation. But
stuff.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's a good win.
Thanks.
All right, Warriors. If you'd like to connect with us for any reason, join our Instagram fam, Anxiety Warriors Podcast, or shoot us an email at anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com. Shout out your wins of the week, big or small. Let us know if you have any great topic ideas for us, or if you think you would be an amazing guest for our show. Hit us up. Let's get you on the calendar so we can help you share your anxiety journey. Please take a moment and smash that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're tuning in. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of our episodes are uploaded for you over there. And if you're feeling super generous, you can hop into our show notes and tap the Threadless merch shop link and grab yourself something fun because you deserve it. You deserve it.
You got to represent anxiety. She needs representation.
Right? I mean, yeah, I'm so glad it's out there in the world. More anxiety conversation.
Thank you all so much for going on this journey with us. We're so grateful we get to do it with you.
Till next time.